The office siren trend, currently dominating platforms like TikTok and Instagram, presents a curious fusion of soft power and suggestive presentation within the structured confines of corporate life. It's not merely a fashion statement, but a calculated aesthetic choice that leverages femininity, sensuality, and confidence in a space traditionally defined by restraint and formality. The trend encapsulates a broader cultural moment. The modern woman reclaiming her right to express beauty, allure, and boldness even in traditionally rigid environments. The look often involves carefully coordinated outfits that blur the line between high fashion and suggestive appeal. Tailored pencil skirts, fitted blouses, sultry red lips, and an energy that is both commanding and captivating. But the problem isn't just about clothes, it's about symbolism, implications, and consequences. What message does the office siren send when it enters a space meant for merit, focus, and impartial professionalism? On the surface, many argue that this trend is empowering. Women dressing how they want, looking stunning and confident, embracing their divine feminine energy. It sounds liberating. But freedom in a shared space doesn't exist in a vacuum. When self-expression enters communal, professional ecosystems, the effect ripples beyond the individual. Intentions may be pure, but perception, especially in environments burdened by gender politics, is often more powerful than the act itself. We must ask, where is the ethical boundary between self-expression and the social responsibility of professionalism? The modern workplace is not just a building, it is a psychological environment where power, perception, and human instincts collide. If an aesthetic causes others to feel distracted, uncomfortable, or confused about behavioral norms, is the individual expression still ethically neutral? There's also the very real issue of psychological projection and unconscious motives. Carl Jung taught us that what is unconscious will inevitably be acted out, especially when we deny it. So, when someone adopts a seductive persona in the office and claims it's just fashion, we must ask, is it only that, or is it the projection of an internal desire to feel admired, validated, or powerful in a place where power is currency? Men and women alike carry the anima and animus, the unconscious opposite gender archetypes, and when repressed, they manifest in unpredictable ways. The office siren may in fact be a symbolic reenactment of suppressed desires to control, seduce, or test boundaries. The ethical danger here isn't necessarily about malicious intent, but unconscious motives expressing themselves under the guise of self-styling. But let's talk about the workplace itself. Most companies have HR policies that enforce decorum, not to repress individuality, but to safeguard fairness and neutrality. When someone adopts a look designed to trigger attention or elevate sensuality, it shifts the energy of the room, especially in male-dominated fields. This creates psychological imbalance. Some may feel compelled to respond with flirtation, others may retreat into discomfort, and some might escalate to harassment or passive aggression. None of this is to say that those adopting the office siren look are responsible for others' behavior. But it is to suggest that once you enter a shared professional environment, the ethical burden is not just about rights, but about responsibility. The modern world often forgets this distinction. Just because we can doesn't mean we should, especially if the consequences ripple far beyond personal gratification. Then there is the concept of soft power. Soft power is the ability to influence others through allure, charisma, or inspiration, rather than coercion. The office siren aesthetic isn't a loud proclamation of power, it's an insinuation. It seduces rather than demands. But soft power, when used in environments not designed to handle it, can produce unintended consequences, misinterpretations, jealousy, romantic confusion, or even career sabotage. Some will say this is nothing new. Women have always walked a tightrope between expressing beauty and avoiding objectification. But the viral nature of this trend puts the issue under a microscope. The more we glorify it without examining it, the more we risk reinforcing problematic dynamics in workplaces already struggling to define what professionalism means in a gender-evolving world. Let's also consider the psychological effects on other women in the office. Not everyone wants to dress suggestively or embrace a siren persona. Some simply want to be respected for their skills. But when beauty and seduction become the unofficial standard of excellence, the workplace becomes an aesthetic battleground, not a meritocratic one. Women may feel pressured to keep up, leading to insecurity, resentment, or disengagement. The masculine psyche is also not immune. Many men have been conditioned to suppress their sexual responses in professional settings, but that doesn't mean the instincts are gone. When someone brings erotic energy into the office, it becomes a silent battlefield between professionalism and primal response. If these feelings are unacknowledged, they get redirected into power plays, passive aggression, or internalized shame. And let's not forget the potential legal consequences. If the office siren trend is normalized in the workplace and someone makes an inappropriate comment or gesture in response, who bears responsibility? The legal system may defend the woman's right to dress how she pleases, but HR policies tend to prioritize risk mitigation and harmony. This can lead to disciplinary action, confusion, or even litigation, not out of malice, but out of misaligned expectations. Ethics, unlike laws, are about what is right, not just what is allowed. Dressing suggestively in a bar and in a boardroom carry different social consequences, even if the outfit is the same. Context is everything. The ethical line is crossed not when you wear lipstick or heels, but when your presence begins to challenge the emotional or mental safety of others in a space designed for equality and focus. Some argue that the office siren is a rebellion against patriarchal suppression, that it's a feminist statement of empowerment. But true empowerment uplifts everyone, not just the individual expressing it. If your aesthetic freedom creates chaos, distraction, or ethical confusion for others, is it really empowerment? Or is it an ego trap disguised as liberation? What makes the office siren even more complex is its psychological allure. It invokes mythology, the sirens of Homer's Odyssey, whose beauty and song lured sailors to their doom. The modern siren doesn't sing, but she glances, she walks, she holds eye contact just long enough to destabilize the observer. This archetype has power, but it is a power rooted in seduction, not service. Is this the kind of influence that builds healthy teams and equitable leadership? Let's explore the root of this seduction: validation. In a digital age where likes, comments, and views are the new currency, the office siren is an offline extension of the same principle. It's about being seen, being wanted, being watched. But when the desire to be perceived overtakes the desire to serve or contribute meaningfully, we're not advancing femininity, we're weaponizing it. Carl Jung warned that every persona hides a shadow. The woman who projects allure at work may have a shadow filled with insecurity, unhealed wounds, or a need for external approval. Her power becomes brittle, only effective when others respond. And if they don't, or worse, if they retaliate, she risks collapse. The ethical question then becomes, are we teaching women to build inner strength or to rely on external seduction as their source of identity? The ethical alternative isn't repression, it's intentionality. A woman can look stunning, professional, and powerful without relying on innuendo or archetypal seduction. She can command a room with intelligence, warmth, and clarity, qualities that foster respect rather than temptation. True siren energy isn't about the outfit. It's about the energy behind the outfit. We also need to speak about the long-term impact of this trend on younger generations. Teenagers and young adults observing the office siren trend may conclude that feminine power lies in being desired, not being respected. This subtly rewires their ambitions, their self-worth, and their professional standards. The cost? A generation that confuses sensual attention with workplace value. In male-dominated industries, the stakes are even higher. When a woman walks in embodying the office siren, She may gain immediate attention, but she may also attract subconscious resentment or envy. Even if no one says it out loud, the group dynamic shifts. The men may struggle to engage her as an equal, the women may feel undermined, and the workplace becomes a silent war zone of unspoken tension. This is why ethics matter, not because we should police fashion, but because we should understand influence. The office siren is not ethically wrong because it's fashionable or feminine. It's ethically gray because it manipulates perception, consciously or unconsciously, in an environment that demands impartiality and team cohesion. When perception becomes a tool of influence rather than competence, the entire meritocratic structure begins to erode. People are no longer rewarded solely for their contributions, insights, or problem-solving abilities, but for how they present and the attention they command. In such an environment, those who choose professionalism over seduction can become invisible, and that invisibility leads to quiet quitting, resentment, or disillusionment. Over time, the workplace becomes emotionally contaminated by the unspoken tension between performance and perception, substance and seduction. This is not a war between modesty and self-expression. It's not about policing women's bodies or choices. It's about examining intention and impact. Ethical living asks us to question, what am I doing, why am I doing it, and how does it affect the collective space I inhabit? The office siren might feel like a bold reclamation of femininity, but if it's rooted in the desire to be envied, desired, or subtly dominate through visual power, then it risks becoming narcissism, masquerading as confidence. The Jungian shadow is critical here. Many of the women embodying the office siren may be unconsciously acting out their disowned shadow, those parts of themselves that crave validation, dominance, or revenge against systems that once made them feel small. When that energy leaks into office spaces, it doesn't liberate, it manipulates. And any power built on manipulation is destined to collapse under the weight of its own inauthenticity. Now, some might say, but men have been doing this forever, using their power, their charm, their wealth to control space. And they're not wrong, but mimicking historical injustices does not correct them. Ethical maturity is not about revenge or replication. It's about evolution. If women truly want to rise beyond patriarchal paradigms, the answer is not becoming the new seducers in power. It's becoming the standard bearers of holistic leadership. This trend also reveals a troubling cultural pattern, the gamification of identity. Everything becomes a performance. The office siren is not just an outfit, it's a role, played for the camera, the office, the algorithm. But when identity becomes performance, authenticity dies. You don't be anything, you merely act it. And the danger is that even you can forget who you are beneath the performance. When your self-worth is linked to how others respond to your aesthetic, you're no longer free. You're imprisoned by feedback loops. And here lies the paradox. The office siren trend is marketed as confidence, but true confidence does not need to announce itself. True confidence is felt in silence, in groundedness, in clarity. It is not a walk, a lip color, or a stare. It is the absence of the need to prove anything. When someone is truly confident, they don't need to manufacture a lure. It radiates naturally, without effort, without seduction. From a masculine perspective, many men don't know how to respond to the office siren. Do they compliment her and risk a report? Do they avoid her and risk appearing rude? Do they engage and risk being misunderstood? The burden of this trend doesn't just fall on women, it falls on men too, especially those who are trying to navigate the delicate dance between admiration and respect, attraction and professionalism. The ethical fog thickens when aesthetics become psychological traps. HR departments are already reporting increased complaints around blurred boundaries, romantic tension, and allegations that are hard to prove but easy to feel. The siren aesthetic may not break any dress code, but it bends the emotional code of the workplace. The unwritten expectations of mutual neutrality. When someone's presence feels like a performance meant to intoxicate rather than inspire, the space becomes a minefield. There is also the issue of differential impact. The same office siren look may be interpreted differently based on race, body type, age, or cultural background. A black woman in a fitted skirt may be accused of being inappropriate, while a white woman in the same outfit is called chic. A curvier woman may be sexualized, while a thinner one is praised for her elegance. This inconsistency reveals the deeper bias embedded in aesthetic judgments and makes the trend even more ethically unstable. Feminism at its core is about agency and equality. But when trends like the office siren rely on archetypes rooted in male desire, we must question whether it is truly feminist or simply a modern adaptation of the male gaze. Are we dressing for ourselves, or are we performing for unseen eyes? Ethical empowerment requires that we answer this question honestly, because if we lie to ourselves, we end up perpetuating the very power structures we claim to resist. There is also the subtle danger of emotional manipulation. A siren presence doesn't just affect visuals, it affects psychology. When someone flirts with energy, not words, with presence, not policy, it creates confusion. People begin to question their own professionalism. Was that look meaningful? Was that touch accidental? Did that smile mean something? In this confusion, real communication dies and workplace trust erodes. The office should be a sanctuary of clarity, not seduction. People should feel safe to focus, collaborate, and contribute without navigating invisible psychological warfare. The siren aesthetic turns every glance into a question, every meeting into a potential minefield. It forces people to analyze behavior that should be unambiguous, and this constant emotional decoding takes an invisible toll on mental bandwidth and team cohesion. The office siren also threatens to undermine women's long-standing fight to be valued for intellect, insight, and strategy. When aesthetic seduction is glorified as power, it distracts from the hard-won victories of generations of women who worked twice as hard to be seen beyond their bodies. Now, younger women may internalize the belief that visibility and attention are the new forms of professional capital, when in fact, they are often traps. Carl Jung once said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." The office siren is a perfect example of an unconscious archetype that has become viral fate. But we still have time to wake up, to integrate the archetype, not act it out, to embody the wisdom of feminine power, not its manipulation. The feminine is not weak, but when it relies on seduction to be seen, it betrays itself. True feminine power is intuitive, nurturing, sharp, radiant, and wise. It doesn't need to play games to feel valued. It doesn't need to mimic masculinity or seduction. It simply is. The modern workplace desperately needs this kind of integrated feminine energy, not aesthetic performances that cause emotional disruption and confusion. We must also acknowledge that some women don't even realize they're doing it. The siren archetype can be unconscious, formed in adolescence, shaped by trauma, activated by insecurity. For some, it becomes a default mask. If I'm beautiful, I'm safe. If I'm wanted, I'm powerful. But the real healing comes not from perfecting the mask, but from removing it and discovering that your presence is enough without performance. There are also men who fuel this trend unconsciously. Some validate the office siren because they enjoy the attention. Others resent it and project disdain. But both responses are reactions to their own internal lack of emotional maturity. Ethical masculinity requires emotional clarity, seeing beauty without losing focus, respecting energy without submitting to it. The siren only has power over those who haven't met their own shadows. So what's the solution? Not censorship, not shame, but conscious intention. Ask yourself, is my presence creating clarity or confusion? Is my aesthetic aligned with my values, or is it designed to provoke? Am I embodying power, or am I seducing it? These questions are not accusations. They are invitations to return to authenticity, to real power, to professional maturity. Workplaces don't need less beauty. They need more emotional clarity, more integrity, more people who show up fully, not just in looks, but in mind, heart, and presence. The office siren might win in the short term. She might go viral. She might be noticed. But real respect is not given to performances. It's given to character. And character can't be faked. Not with lipstick. Not with body language. Not with a gaze. Character is what remains when the performance ends, when no one is watching, when the camera is off, when the meeting is over. That's where ethics begin. Not in outfits, but in intention. As this trend continues to spread, we owe it to ourselves and to the generations behind us to pause and reflect, to ask harder questions, to challenge easy answers, to choose evolution over entertainment. Because the future of the workplace will not be decided by what we wear, but by who we choose to become.